And of course, that's really sad when that happens. So when we're looking at conformation, I would say that we want to try and get a horse in as much of a natural balance as possible. That if you're looking for a horse, if you're looking to buy a horse, I would say that you definitely want to try and buy a horse that's evenly balanced. So there's so many horses that we can think about, different breeds. But the reality of it is, it doesn't really always have to do a breed. You just have to look for the individuals. Of course, there is trouble in different breeds. Actually, hang on a moment, Anthony, I need to come to the thicker gullet of your horse. So when we're looking at Clydesdales, often, or Clydesdale crosses, or heavier set horse crosses, apart from usually the Percheron has quite an open gullet, but a lot of the draft horses, they are bred to have a strong underneath frame to pull down and forward to pull a carriage, right? And often they're quite small through the gullet. So if you have a narrow gullet, if you want to have a horse that's easier to ride and lift, and you have the choice of searching for it, then try and find a little bit of room in the gullet, because it makes it much easier to engage the systems correctly and not get hired apparatus disruption. Now, when you're looking at Athena, at your youngster you posted in the student group, you have to think about that even though you're at that moment, you were looking for a nice line between the withers and the top of the pole, because the horse is very narrow in the gullet, we actually need to try and get such a horse as engaged as possible to come up through the withers. So between the shoulders, come up with the withers a little bit. And then as it comes up, to reach out, because with that we create a little bit more room from underneath, like a hollowing of the lower neck. And when that happens, you create more room in the gullet. So with a horse like that, you'll have to look for activation that is a little bit higher up into that horizontal balance to try and create that space. And you can increase this space with the right training. Obviously not significantly when you're just looking at a short trained horse, but old breeds that are still very much bred to the old war horses, the time of the horses that they were still used in close combat. These horses had to be super agile. They had to have a lot of stamina to go for long distances on the trails, to go from point A to point B. They had to be very secure on their hindquarters to make really quick turns and keep their rider safe. They couldn't break down. So if you look at old breeds, of course, this is a fancy, purposely bred example of a Lusitano for dressage, but overall, Lusitano, Kladruber, Frederiksborg, all those type of breeds that are a little bit less, because they've been more purposely bred for in that arena in Vienna now. But still in that breed, there's also examples, and actually particularly a little bit more in the black Lipizzaner that are rare, but they are there. They seem to be more in the square kind of type. So these old breeds, when they have that little bit square type and they're a good all-rounder, they have around a 45-degree angle shoulder, which makes them suitable for big movement, but they don't go overboard in the movement. That's the horses that are very suitable for carrying weight. Good top line by nature, good lumbar, nice longer frame of the pelvis, because it's better for weight carrying that way. Not too long. Some of the thoroughbreds go very long. They're good for going very fast, but they don't have a lot of long-term sustainability, I'd say. Not anymore, not the ones that are bred for top-level racehorses, but not all thoroughbreds are necessarily bred for that. In Europe, there's also the more riding horse type of thoroughbreds. Let's see. Arab horses, when we're talking about Arab horses, they have really good legs, often have a really beautiful lumbar, often very beautiful through the gullet as well, like room through the gullet, but they can have the weaknesses through the lower cervical that definitely don't have the structure there as in the natural weight carrying, particularly the more modern breed ones. And so as you can see on my example, this horse is leaning on her elbows. And there also can be a little bit short through the pelvis, which stimulates this leaning into the forehand, because with the short pelvis, they don't have the coiling of that beautiful loin the same way, and that weight carrying from behind. It makes the hook step out backwards, like you can see. So they are often a bit more sensitive to sacroiliac injury, lower cervical injury, and also stifle and hook issues if they've been excessively used for endurance riding or people that want to do high-level dressage but don't take care of the framing first. I do like Arab horses a lot because with the right training, they can often become very beautiful for our classical riding. There's still a lot of very strong points to their shape. And particularly, as I said before, a little bit more the old-fashioned type, very beautiful horses in there that are quite similar still in the model of these wool horses as well. So they're very interesting, those types. Let me think what I want to say. That's just one example, right? And as I said, keep in mind that with the breed type, as in, for example, Arab horses, more recently, we've got a whole line into breeding, which goes very fast into the direction of just show horses, which just looks really pretty, a bit like a Disney horse, looks very beautiful, can't carry the weight so well anymore. Doesn't mean that it's not a beautiful horse. It depends on what you want with it, I guess. But for riding, not so much. Quarter horses, we can have some really strong points are often, again, top line, very soft character often. Also strong through the lumbar and strong through the chest. Now, this one here is actually still got quite an okay. You can see how the front leg is very short. It's not the worst one in that example, but the weak points of the quarter horses these days are that they are way too short on the front legs and often also very narrow based, which means the feet are very close together with a very wide chest. So they tend to get a lot of soreness and wear through the front. And the other thing is that really scooped angle of the pelvis with those glute pushed up, that sacroiliac. You can see it, can't see it under the muscle, but there's this real strong angle in the pelvis and in the angles with the hind leg that doesn't quite match up in that way, is that they are too much into rotation already. Now, if you're looking at of this horse in particular, you can see how that would weaken the back because the pelvis rotating down, that the tail is actually coming down, is in motion a good thing. But when it already starts to tip backwards, it disengages the frame as the horse can no longer use its back the same way, and that ventral serrate, that really important ventral serrate lift. So there's always too much strain through a body like that. And there's lots of quarter horses that suffer like in a young age from kissing spine and significant sacrum issues as well. So they are almost naturally bred now to go so much on the forehand. But as you can see of the horse in canter here, what a strain that puts through the angle of the hindquarters. So here's a good one for a youngster Tennessee walking horse. Now that's not suitable for riding anymore, right? If you're watching that picture, that doesn't work at all anymore to bring a carrying of a rider, as the hook are out from behind. There is already, the angles are not matching up, and you can see even the angle of the shoulder is laying too far backwards. And one that has some trouble with having angles that are coming too far backwards is a Frisian horse. So when you get such a sloping angle of the shoulder for that really high knee lift in the movement, then that is not very suitable for carrying a rider anymore. That functioning of the thoracic sling, it takes a long time. It's still very possible, but one of the things that people often say with Frisians is, they're very slow. They're slow to learn, they're slow to react, and they must be slow of intelligence, which is not true at all. They're hard to have balance because their angles are so far out, plus they suffer often the hypermobility. And for the example of this Frisian breeding stallion, that they obviously are choosing to breed into this category because it's got those high parade-like movements, the sternum is literally falling forward out of its chest. It sticks out through the front. That's incredible to be able to move with that. It's like their trunk to move a whole lot, fall backwards to lift the front feet off the ground again, and then shovels forward again, and then backwards. And if you imagine that their structure is very mobile and too elastic, it shovels in and out of its side. So the vertical balance gets very lost as well. So it's not that they're slow to react because they don't feel your aid. It's because they can't hold themselves so stable. It's like they're on roller skates. And so it's very possible to create a good riding horse out of Frisians, but it does take time. It takes longer, the time to mature, to become a good riding horse, and to actually have the capacity for weight carrying. So even though it looks like a strong horse, this horse is not very suitable for weight carrying at all, and it needs time of solid training on the ground.